there's an underlying question to why we do Torah. What's the objective of the concept? I have a whole article about the difference between dveikus and shleimus. Some people are into the religious experience, and some people are into the development of self. So some people look upon religion as the Torah as offering you a methodology of developing yourself, and some people say it is a methodology of developing a relationship with God. Fact is,
it's not both.
It could be. It could be both. It mostly is both. But the fact is that what a lot of people don't. Okay. What a lot of people don't really recognize, like in that idea, is that there is some type of objective, and it's not just simply about the action. The action is supposed to have some type of result, and what that result is a matter of a lot of debate, discussion, and so forth. Like, for example, there's a machlokas between there's an individual who presents the idea of a disagreement between the Chazon Ish and Ramosha, whether Torah is in line with human nature or not. Okay, so through the observance of Torah, should a human being be happy or not? Okay, if you understand happiness as the fulfillment of self, okay, which in the broadest sense means that you find some culmination of human experience, right? So that observing this lifestyle is supposed to have some aspect of fulfilling your humanity. That seems to be the approach of Ramosha, and therefore he understands that that through the Orthodox lifestyle, person can be happy. In fact, Orthodoxy should not take away from that happiness. Okay, so the idea is that he understands then that if you observe in this lifestyle, it's happy, and it should make you in line with your humanity. Okay, that kind of answer, for example, if you consider it to be an aspect of humanity, is, let's say, a strong relationship, a strong romantic relationship, then Torah does not challenge a strong romantic relationship. It's part of it, and therefore a person can sit there and say, I had a good life, just in this world. Okay, this system has offered me a good life. As with any system, is there possibilities things go wrong here? But the fact is, offers you a good life. Okay. This individual, Larry Kaplan, argues that the Chazon Ish didn't agree with that. The Chazon Ish believes that Torah is contrary. The observance of Torah is contrary to human nature. So, on a certain level, the person who follows Torah will not have what you would find to be a fulfilling human life. He might have the fulfilling life on a different level. It might be, this is not to say that tzaddik is not happy, but it's on a different level.
Could that be also the way they live their lives?
Yeah, that's what he's saying. The way they live their lives and their objective.
I mean, not like if your lifestyle is not about fulfilling yourself, and it's you live kind of more of a meager lifestyle, you're not going to appreciate it.
Right. So an example of the distinction might be like this: if a person is, let's say, not happily married, okay, not abusive, just not happily married.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is someone like Ramosha might be more might be more concerned about this lack of happiness. Chazon Ish might be less. I'm trying to think of another example. See, you take for example, if you know, just like, you know, you had this argument in terms of some aspects of the Haredi what do you call it, psychology or thought process in Eretz Yisrael, where the Haredim are having a difficult life, have difficult lives, and the argument is given, why don't they do this and this and this? And the position is, it's just contrary to their value system and so forth. But their value system is extremely difficult. So if you have a certain type of value system that says having a good life is a value within Torah, then you'll sit there and say, well, we have to try and make people happier in their lifestyle.
Right.
Other people who say that's, you know, being happy is not necessarily of great significance in the Torah decision, will not be as adamant in that position, or would not be as concerned about that position, and this reflects certain attitudes in how people approach others. Okay, someone is depressed. Okay, I'm not talking about, you know, really, you know, clinically depressed, but someone's depressed. So the fact is that some people say, well, that's life. Other people would say, wait a second, we got to do something about this. You know, right. and that's a reflection of the attitude. If you say you're doing something and you're not happy in it, is that something that you're going to take as serious or not serious? Now, in the secular world, it clearly is serious, but this happens a lot of times in religious consciousness. That within certain views of religion, the fact that you're not happy, well, what do you expect? To be happy in the next world? Who says you're supposed to be happy in this world? Right? And that's a disagreement between certain viewpoints within the Jewish perspective. So the point is that that's an example of attitudes in learning Torah and so forth. What I wanted to get at is, and there's different viewpoints of what you think the whole objective of Torah is about and so forth. The reason I wanted to deal with the Shaarei Yosher is because he opens up a complexity in ethics that reveals how multi-dimensional ethics are and how multi-faceted ethics are. And the truth is most people... What?
Shuvim Panim and all that.
Well, no, it's not even going to Shuvim Panim. It's not even an aspect of multi-dimensional on that level. It's the fact is that a concept may have many different sides to it that make it multi-dimensional inherently. Let me give you an example. And we looked at this last week, and I just want to look at it again. Okay? He talks about avos atzma, love of self. So already he points out, we started off by saying, basically upon the simple understanding of ethics, the selflessness, you care for others. Okay, God cares for others, you should care for others, right? However, people also have to have self-love. They have to have some caring for themselves. Okay? And he says that's inherent. In fact, we've seen that there's a value in that your life has to go first.
Right.
Okay? The fact is, he says, and then he says that God placed it in the human being to love themselves and take care of themselves. Because in many ways, your first responsibility is to the mission that God has given you in this world. In my viewpoint, and I've mentioned this before, in Christianity is all about selflessness. Love in Christianity is all about caring for the other. But the truth is if you look in terms of Christianity, this world is irrelevant to Christianity, and your development is irrelevant to Christianity. Because basically in Christianity, I'm being very broad. Obviously, this is not, there's different views of Christianity. But if you think in terms of the very concept of grace, the Christian concept, which means that Jesus saves you, the point is you can't save yourself, right? You can't rectify the problem you have in this world. Therefore, the point is on a certain level, let Jesus take care of you. That's basically what the attitude of grace is about. In Judaism, we say you're supposed to take care of yourself. Okay? That's why we have the idea of Torah and mitzvahs in the sense of you try and perfect yourself. Now, there's an interesting Rambam about that, which really reflects the distinction between Judaism and Christianity. In Christianity, you're always living with original sin. You're always living with that big black mark on your garment, let's say. Got a nice white garment, but once you got that black mark, you can't get into heaven, right? Because of that original sin. The Rambam says in Makos, he says exactly the opposite. He says, how do you get into heaven? By doing an Olam Haba, by doing one mitzvah right. Okay? And that was almost the absolute opposite viewpoint. It's like you're really striving to just get one like the Rambam talks about, being 51-49. What do you call? Okay. 51-49, 50-50. The point is just get one mitzvah right. In other words, if you just get one white spot on your black thing, the fact is that's an aspect of just trying to bring up a little good into the world. It's an aspect of growth. So the point is that this is all an aspect of, if you really think that growth is important, then the movement, a little movement, is tremendous. Okay? Okay, you improved you worked really hard and you improved your grades from a 72 to a 75. Well, that deserves to have some type of recognition. Now, if you look at the other way around, you're still not at 100. Therefore, that's it. You're still if you need 100 to pass, you still fail. You worked really hard to get from 72 to 75, you still fail. But the fact is just that if you look at value in your growth, that's significant. So the point is, Hayek Kollman says that you have value because your mission has value. Therefore, you have to take care of yourself. Okay, so that already says there's a value in self-love. But he says two aspects of self-love, and this is just to show you how very complicated self-love is about. Okay, so if you look in terms of these handouts, he says over here.
Pass out the handout?
Yeah. Here. Yeah. Okay, so he says like this.
No.
So he says two aspects of self-love. Okay?
I don't look inside anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just trying to find it myself for a second. Okay, so one aspect of the self-love is found on page 4. Okay? 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 And he basically says that giving a person self-love allows a person to be able to take. So he says, okay, so the point is that he says that I'll just read the English. The infinite wanted to bestow complete good, that there wouldn't even be the embarrassment of receiving. Okay? Now, what does that mean? It means you're so interested in yourself that it doesn't matter whether you actually earned it or not, you get a gift. Because you have an aspect of caring about yourself. So if someone gives you a gift, hey, this is beneficial to me, I'm going to take it. So that's an aspect of self-love. Okay? Now, then he says another side to it, the next line. Okay? Okay. Okay? he says that how far the power of loving oneself goes, okay, that a person is more content with one unit that he earns on his own than what is given to him, even from God. Okay? So he says, from here it should be evident self-love, that as that love of oneself is desired by the Holy One, okay, in the sense that, on the other hand, you also want to earn. So the truth is that self-love has two aspects of it. One allows you to take and not be embarrassed by taking. On the other hand, this self-love also means that you're interested in your own accomplishments. You want to be able to earn it, because the truth is, what's self-love about? It's about a recognition of self. Okay? And when you recognize yourself, there's actually different aspects to it. On one hand, you want to have nice things. On the other hand, you want to have a results of your own efforts. You want to see the results of your own efforts. Okay? Okay, so in a certain way, you take someone like a Michael Jordan, who practiced like crazy in terms of basketball. Okay? Why did he do that? It was because he cared about himself. Okay? The point is being the best you can be is also an aspect of self-love. On the other hand, being able to say, listen, thanks for the present, is also an aspect of caring for oneself. Caring for oneself has many different dimensions to it. Even contradictory, because that idea of earning is one of the reasons that you also don't want to just take. You want to earn, you don't want to just take. But on the other hand, it's the same idea that says I care about myself that allows me to say I want to take. I don't mind taking certain things. So the truth is that our emotions, our values, are very complex. And even the thing which may support one idea may be something that may support the exact opposite idea.
What is this book?
Shaarei Yosher. It's from
When is it from?
It's from the 1800s. It's actually his introduction to. This is the introduction to the book. And the book is a discussion of love. What?
No, Freud was later.
Yeah, he might have been around. He passed away. He passed away right before the Holocaust. Oh. So it might be late 1800s, early 1900s. I think Shimon passed away right before the Holocaust.
Wait, Scott passed away before
the author. Freud. Yeah, I think Freud also. I think they're around the same time. Okay, I mean the thing is though, see, once you start getting involved in breaking down values and seeing the complexity of values, you see that these values have contradictory natures to it that somehow have the same, have also both having purpose to it.
It's all gray.
What?
It's all gray.
Right. But the fact is that it makes up the intensity of the human being. And the fact is that in certain ways, religion tries to simplify. Okay? That's one problem. On the other side, though, what he's developing here is that really, if you understand that there's a maker, then you understand that there is a purpose to this, and what's going on with this, and how does it work.
But it's all about his purpose, isn't it?
Then the question is, well, that's an interesting question, because what's his purpose?
Right.
His purpose, it's interesting in the sense it isn't we say that his purpose is really your purpose. So the fact is that there's another side to it, in the sense that if God has no wants, and he says beforehand, he says that the opening line he's only giving. So really his purpose is your purpose. Right? So the point is that if we say it's to benefit you, we understand why his purpose is your purpose. That also shows the complexity of the issue, because everyone says you're supposed to do it for l'shem shamayim, but l'shem shamayim, right, is for you as well.
Is it wrong to have a person who is not religious, but is everyone's goal in life to be religious? Is that what right by Hashem?
I don't. You're asking two questions here.
The value of being religious.
The religion states that it gives a statement of what we argue is the purpose of the human being, which is based upon Torah. So if you ask me what the Torah states is your purpose, I'll answer, okay, this is what Torah states. It says you do this, don't do this, do this, this. Okay, fine. That's the belief of Torah, of the religion. If you're asking me how God judges a person, ask God. I have no idea.
Don't we have Torahs that talk about how Hashem judges people?
Yeah, and the fact is my understanding is it's all speculation and ideas that are supposed to help us in trying to understand our purpose in life. But the fact is in the end, many of these things point to the fact that you have no idea.
I'm going with agnosticism, with religion being a way to control people, but you know, it gets some aspects of general spirituality, right? But
control for what purpose?
Spirituality.
For what purpose?
That's not agnosticism.
See?
Well, why not? I believe there's something up there, something spiritual.
That's not necessarily agnosticism.
Hi. Well, okay. Whatever.
See, the point is that I get upset when people start making statements about what God will do and so forth and so forth. Like, I generally never talk about heaven and hell, because to me that's God's decision.
No, I talk about hell. It's Michigan.
Okay. I mean, the fact is that when people, I can tell you what the halacha is. I can tell you what the halacha is. I can say this is what the Torah says you should do, not do, and so forth and so forth. After the fact, telling you, what God's going to do to you because you violated the law, my attitude is, how the heck do I know? I'm not that cheshbon. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not the only one who basically was told it's none of your business. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu asked. He says, why is there tzaddik v'ra'lo and a rasha v'tolo? Why do you have a righteous guy who has a bad situation and an evil guy has a good situation? And God says you can't understand it. The fact is,
Rabbi Akiva did.
No.
Didn't he?
No. No. I'm the same Moshe Rabbeinu before he died understood it. But the fact is that no one knows.
I thought Rabbi Akiva understood tzaddik v'ra'lo. That was like the highest level of.
I've never heard that.
Oh, okay, could be wrong.
Okay. The fact is what the point is we attempt to try and understand it, but the fact is that we don't. But really what it comes down to is, I'm not even getting into theories or something like that. I'm getting into the perception that it really comes down to your question, right? It's the fact that trying to understand God's purpose in creating the world is beyond me. It's supposed to have something to do with being beneficial to me, and it's supposed to have something to do with, I understand, to be some aspect of a growth process over the time of my life, that I have some kind of mission in life. But then to try and figure out how that comes together, I have no idea. And the truth is I have a real difficult time with it, and I usually have a difficult time with people trying to explain God. Fact is that.
What about like people say Hashem loves you?
What? Yeah. So good. But.
What's a platitude?
It's okay. But how does that help me understand anything?
Well, it gives you like encouragement.
It's like it's
life.
Yeah, it does give you encouragement in life and so forth. But the fact is that in a certain way, it's still a challenging life. I mean, the truth is I once wrote an article on the value of atheism. In many ways, belief in God makes you step away from having to meet your challenges, right? Like God will take care of it, or something like that. The point is that in certain ways you're supposed to act, or you're supposed to think I better, that I better take. I'm supposed to take care of it, and to not think about God, because that will only weaken the resolve that you have to accept the responsibility of the action. Now, is God involved? Yes, of course. This is not a denial of God's existence. It's a matter of understanding a sense of responsibility, understanding the objective, and a lot of times people shy away from it and shy away from the depth of issues. Issues are really deep. I mean, I know that, like, I speak about this every once in a while. I first confronted the issue of a gay Orthodox Jew in the early 80s, when an individual who was gay asked to speak to me. He was Baal Tshuva, and he asked to speak to me about his own issues being gay and from and so forth.
He was Baal Tshuva and he was gay?
Yeah, well, the fact is, when he already spoke to me, he was already dropping out. He was from and so on. Someone asked him to speak to me, and by the time that they thought he should speak to me, he was already dropping out. And we had a long talk for like 2-3 hours about the dilemma. And it was a real dilemma to him. Okay? And what I noticed is that it has nothing to do with sex, it has to do with love.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, most people don't want to confront the issue of the relationship of sexuality and love.
Right.
Right? And the fact of the matter is, most people don't want to deal with the fact that there's an aspect of physical attraction that somehow we connect to love. Okay? That somehow is connected to love. And in many ways, what the homosexual person is saying is not just about sex or something. The person is saying, this is the only, I can only have a love relationship which is of the significance of that love relationship that people get married with someone of the same sex.
Right.
And that's what this guy kept on saying to me. I don't want to be alone.
Right.
And I understood his dilemma. So for the last 30 years, I have been dealing with that dilemma. Okay? I've written about it. I've had people discuss my topic about it. Some people think of me as too far to the right. Some people think of me as too far to the left. But basically, I deal with it. In fact, just today, I wrote a Huffington Post article on religious discrimination and gay rights.
What's the title?
Okay. I forget the title they gave to it. But if you go to Huffington Post, I'm a blogger. Anyway, so the point is that there are real issues. The point is, when I read that the Torah says that the homosexual act, the male homosexual act is asur. Okay, that's basically in the Torah, whatever. The fact is I understand it means that the person has these difficulties with relationships. So I struggle with wanting to understand what God's thinking about. What's God saying? God's saying that this person can't have this type of relationship. So I understand. Now the truth is that if I run into a person who's gay, right? Am I going to tell a person who's in a same-sex relationship? I would never say to that person he's going to hell. I never would say, who am I to make that decision? Right? That's between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? And I don't know how God evaluates. God says, here's the halacha. How God evaluates someone for violating the halacha is between him and God.
But so even with this, but there's a lot of, so how do you separate like the speculation, like the heavy speculation from...
Until you die and you figure it out then.
No, like, but some people are fairly sure of their speculation versus some people... Is there okay, better question. Is there legitimacy to the speculation?
No, speculation of what?
Of schar nonesh, reward and punishment. If you do
to try and understand it.
What about kare?
Whatever it is, I mean, it just tells me that this
Don't
is
they
a
say, like,
this,
cut
yeah,
you off from the
yeah. So the fact is it's a heavy concept. I'm not trying to download this to belittle this as a statement of halakha. It's a pretty the violation in objective terms. Because there's a difference between the objective statement. Here's the law. This law is a serious law. That's clear. Okay. the homosexual act is a pretty strong prohibition. I'm not trying to say that that takes away from the objective nature of the law. This is what the law is saying. What I'm saying is, after 120, how God evaluates it is based upon the subjectivity of understanding the personality of the individual and that person's own trials and tribulations.
Right.
You know, we have a concept in halacha of the Tish Nishba. Okay, the person who was not brought up from is not held accountable for his sins. Now, the truth of the matter is does it mean not brought up from, not brought up? What does that mean? But the fact is that we're all products of our psychological influences. Okay, and Tish Nishba doesn't just mean brought up from, not brought up from. It's talking about your psychological influences, and only God really knows that, knows how to evaluate. I'm not playing God in terms of the individual statement about a person's righteousness, not righteousness, which is what the evaluation is after the fact.
Right.
After 120 years. But the point is that I can make an objective statement. Here is the halacha. Obviously, from a Jewish perspective, there is a problem with homosexuality. Okay, I mean, in terms of a normative lifestyle choice, halacha says that this behavior is forbidden. Okay, so I know that. But that means to me is a struggle of trying to understand why some people are born with this drive. What does it say? What is it telling me? What's behind this drive? And that leads to a much more complex understanding of it. It's not just simplistically, like, oh, this is evil. There's obviously something here. God created this drive and what's going on, and it's obviously a struggle. And then it also branches into the whole concept of sexuality. What is the relationship between sex and love? Okay, and the nature of that. It's much broader issues. And what I'm saying is that we have to struggle with these issues. And the truth is that in certain ways, it's a very interesting statement. Okay, and people really don't get it. If you look in the movie about gay,
trembling before God,
about Orthodox gay individuals, in the video they have a complimentary video of interviews with the rabbis who are mentioned, right? And one of the rabbis in the video is Rabbi Steve Greenberg, who is gay, right? And a controversial individual. Is he really, would you really say he's Orthodox? Okay, fine. But what he says is, when he was living at Gush Etzion, and he felt that he had attraction to men, at the time he felt he was bisexual. He wanted to find out what to do. So he didn't want to speak to any of the rabbis in his world, because he didn't want to be known in his world. So he said he went to speak to Shaarei Yosher. Okay?
Oh my God.
Okay, so that's a major player in the Haredi world. And he came into him and he said at the time he didn't present himself as gay, he presented as bisexual. And Shaarei Yosher said the following to him. Okay? He said, "My son, you have been given 2 quantities of love. Use it wisely." And I said, what? Okay, what? He says, that's all he said to me. Okay, now, then Steve didn't really expand upon it, but he said that's what Rabbi Yosef said. Okay, you have 2 quantities of love. Use it wisely. Okay? Now, what is Rabbi Yosef really saying? Well, the truth of the matter is, if you look in terms of certain Kabbalistic ideas and so forth and so forth, the sexual attraction is connected to love. The reason you are sexually attracted to certain people is because we are all bonded to each other. What is love? Love is really our bonding. It's Ava Aqua. Aqua is bonding. So the truth is as we talk about it, Yosher Bear talks about the fact that, for example, it's not that the child represents that you have relations in order to have children. He says the child represents the unity of a couple. So there's an aspect of bonding. So sexual drive has an aspect of bonding. So it seems that Rabbi Yosher is saying something to the extent that if you have sexual attraction to men, it might have something to do with this bonding, but you're not supposed to bond with men physically, but it's not supposed. Now, I don't know.
A man without actually,
what?
So would he then say loving a man without actually engaging?
It's a different aspect of love. But the fact is, then you get into an issue of love. We use the term love. I'm just saying this. We use the term love to represent familial love, right? Parental love, and also to represent marital love. Now, you're not going to say that you're not going to say, you're going to say, well, what does that have to do with sexuality? Well, the point is Rabbi Yosher was saying there's something about love. So then, how do you understand familial love? What does it mean in terms of the Arias? What does it mean and the point is, this is a complex idea. And obviously it doesn't mean that every form of love is supposed to have some type of physical attraction or physical manifestation of it. But the point is that there's something here that Rabbi Yosher is trying to say, that there's some connection between physical attraction and love, but obviously in some type of controlled manner, without application in every situation and so forth. So the point is that we're dealing with a very complex concept, and in many ways people hide away from that. People hide away from complexity of issues. And what I wanted to show you with the Shaarei Yosher is that he doesn't explain every aspect of complexity, but he's making a statement about self. And how many people think that if you're selfish, it means give me. And he points out that if you also have this measure of self-love, you'll also be a person who says, "Let me do it.
Right.
I want to do it."
Right.
Which you would say, what does that do with the give me person? But he's saying, well, it seems like Michael Jordan trying to become a better basketball player, in a certain way, is a reflection of self-love. Because there's some aspect of him, his concern for his own being. The point is that every aspects of our life have many different sides to it. Okay, and many ways under Torah, you put things under the microscope. You see the various different sides, and then you have to try and balance these different sides.
That's the challenge.
And that's the challenge.
Okay.
Okay, and the point is that usually a lot of people do it by being simple. Okay, this is bad, this is good. And the fact is that they do it by avoiding the complexity. And in many ways, my point is that there is something he's doing here in terms of this complexity, where he even brings up the idea of self-love. And he says, wait a second, that he says also self-love, which he's defined as in essence of saying, I'm going to work for things, I'm going to do things. He says on the top of page 5, he basically starts to say that self-love, has to be balanced. And he says there's a possibility that with self-love, you will try and you basically will try and deny God. Okay, now he says over here something very interesting. He says that self-love could lead to evil. Like on page 5, he says, in my opinion, this is true despite, he says self-love has value, and he says this is true despite all the evil and sin that the world is full of because of this media of self-love. Guess what? This is a good thing, but on the other hand, it can also lead to a bad thing. And then he develops this idea that he says this is a problem people have with wealth. Okay, because you want to think that your wealth is a product of your own accomplishments, you won't recognize this from God. Because you want to say it's mine, and I worked on it, and so forth and so forth. You won't recognize it from God. And when you recognize that it's from God, then you'll recognize the wealth isn't your own. And therefore you will not really be that wealthy. Because you're recognizing that it's not, like he says over here, he says a person wants to say I earned it and so forth, he has wealth, but the fact is, at the same point in time, okay, if he says at that point in time, though, if you understand that what he says he believes with complete true faith everything that's from the holy ones, he is really poor. Because he recognizes that this wealth is not really his own accomplishment. So what really is your own accomplishment? It's your own work. But your own work is also a product of God being involved. So the truth is there's a balancing here in terms of some aspect of self-love being significant to say, hey, I have responsibility, I accomplished it, I did this. On the other hand, you have some aspect of recognizing that things are from God, so you recognize that, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't be so self-centered. Right? I mean, you run into certain people who are remarkably haughty. And he said, I remember once it was when my grandmother passed away. My aunt was sitting shiva in our house in Ottawa, and the rabbi of the shul came in, and my aunt said to him, "Oh, Rabbi, you're a very handsome man." I said, "Thank you," and really, took it, and he says, it's the way I'm created. God made me handsome. Okay, fine. He didn't take it like a personal compliment. Like, wow, that's the way I'm created. Okay, so it's nice. God created me, but that's not my accomplishment. The point is that really, if you had that idea, even when you accomplish something, right? You have certain people who are very smart and they accomplish something. They had the idea, but wait a second, my IQ really came from God, So it sort of balances your own accomplishment. So the point is, and you see that, by the way, you see this with tremendous disagreement on how you look at certain people. Like I've read certain stories like about Gedolim, right? And there's such an interesting attitude towards Gedolim. There's one attitude where they talk about how this Gadol at the age of 3 was already a Baki in Shas. This Gadol at the age of 4 was never did anything wrong, so forth and so forth. Like, he was totally a perfect human being. So see how Kaddish he must have been, or how special he must have been. There's another side that says he was created that way. So what grace is that?
Right, you can't you see
right.
Very great Talmid Chacham, you hear the way they speak, and you're like,
right.
I can't relate to you because I definitely don't have I have my struggles are definitely different.
Yeah, but even in terms of you were born that way.
Right.
So what did you accomplish?
Right.
Okay. Now the truth is that in many ways they still accomplish things, but the point is that if you are accomplish something because you have a very high IQ, well, God gave you that IQ, so maybe it should buttress your own feeling of self-accomplishment. On the other hand, this feeling of self-accomplishment has value. The point is that that's really becomes an issue of how you balance things, how you look at things. And many ways, the way we look at things is supposed to leave us with this on one hand, on the other hand, in terms of the accomplishment and the results of accomplishments. And the fact is that a lot of people, like I always find this with Gadol. I found that, for example, with the making of a Gadol, which the book that was heavily critiqued. And part of the argument was this really showed the making of a Gadol, because he went through his own trials and tribulations. Yeah. I'll tell you an interesting issue where it becomes very interesting. Rav Yaakov Emden, there's a whole question about this in terms of his autobiography. In his autobiography, he tells the following story.
Who?
Rav Yaakov Emden.
Who is
Ein Yaakov?
No.
No?
No. Rav Yaakov is the Gadol.
Different Yaakov.
Yeah. Rav Yaakov Emden is he's the Yavitz. He has a sitter. Yavitz sitter. Anyways, Rav Yaakov Emden. Yeah. So he writes in his
blog.
In his no, in his autobiography. Right, so he was in Australia and he wasn't feeling well. And he was being taken care of by his cousin. Okay? and he was really getting along well with his cousin. Okay, and he sort of implies that if he was willing, she would have been willing. Okay, but of course he didn't do anything. Right? Okay. Now that statement in his autobiography is removed in some autobiographies. Why?
He specifically wrote that?
Yeah, he wrote it. So people say, you talk about Lashon Hara before, you can't even say self Lashon Hara. So the point is, some people say he should.
Facts.
Yeah, but Lashon Hara is even facts. But the fact is that there's a question about Lashon Hara. You say Lashon Hara, but the truth of it is, he wrote that. So the point is some people took it out. Why? Because Chas v'Shalom, that you think that Rav Yaakov Emden even had a machshava like that, even would even think of that.
Yeah, he wrote it somewhere.
Right? Okay. On the other hand, people, it seems that what he was saying was,
He's human.
I'm human, and I exercise control, and I exercise restraint, and the opportunity was there. You know what I mean? So the truth is you have this machlokas and how you look at it. The other people say this is a great mala of Yaakov Emden. He basically said he's Rabbi Yaakov Emden. It's a great mala.
No, he didn't spoke which cousin?
Well,
The cousin was taking care of him in Amsterdam. Okay.
No, but isn't that because then they'll be like.
Okay, fine. The fact is that the point is that nothing happened, and the fact is that you have this situation where and you see it with certain aspects where people. It's very interesting talking about people like you know. Some people say he's such a tzaddik, he didn't even have these drives. And other people say, no, he's a tzaddik, he had these drives, and he didn't act upon these drives. The point is that this is the kind of issues that you deal with. The point is, though, is you really understand this is all a matter of understanding humanity. And what I find, and I'm sort of going a little bit from the Shaarei Yosher, what I find from Shaarei Yosher, what he's saying over here is that we have human drives. These human drives have different manifestations, different aspects to it. The same human drive has different sides to it that reflects even contradictory things, and these contradictory things may have value in different situations. There's a value in self accomplishment. There's also challenge.
Hidden?
What?
It's so hidden in the Jewish community. Like, I've never ever seen anything like this in my whole education.
Yeah, the fact is that
everybody's always telling you, oh, you know, oh, it's a sham if something good happens to you. Oh, you did this. Oh, why aren't you doing this? You know, it's very hidden. At least for women. I don't know about for men.
I feel like it's very different for women.
That's why I like.
No, it's very different for women. It's very different.
I don't know. They're actually taught English studies.
What?
Well, you grew up in Chabura.
Women.
They taught English studies?
As opposed to yeshiva, which teaches just religious studies.
You grew up in Chabad. It's a little.
Okay.
The fact is that
you know, girls in my school would cry over they got an 85 but they didn't get a 90, and that was very common.
I still
Like
do
things
that.
like that.
I mean, the fact is that there are objective standards. A person needed a 90 to get into okay, so
Yeah, but it's not like that.
no. What happens is, see, I got when I present things on the complexity of ethics and the challenge of really trying to understand Torah,
Right.
it demands of a human being to think.
Okay.
It demands the person takes responsibility and is willing to put on their thinking cap and accept working things out. That means you're empowering the person. You're giving the person autonomy. You're basically saying think.
But like in all my Jewish schools experience, I wasn't allowed to think.
So the thing is that one of the problems in the Jewish world is that there's a concern that if you're allowed to think, it will lead you off the derech.
Well, maybe
Okay?
they should have a truer derech.
Okay, well, it's not a question of being true or dare. It's the fact that your life is very complex.
Yeah.
And like the Shaarei Yosher, Yaakov Weinberg wrote somewhere, said whenever you're involved with thought, there are going to be casualties.
Okay.
Because the fact is that thought lets someone explore, lets someone think through all these things and so forth and so forth.
Well,
The point is that in many ways, if you want to maintain a certain conclusion, then you don't want to give such openness to allow a person to really think through things. Now, the consequence of that, what I find, is that a lot of people then rebel anyways.
I think basically what they're doing is switching these people going off the derech for these people going off the derech.
Right.
And honestly, I think it's these people you want on the derech because they're more willing to go after it.
Right.
These people are just like, okay, I'm good, I'll do it.
The truth is I've given that argument in the sense that what you lose are really the people who are really able to really want to face the challenge. I mean, the fact is that you're not always going to find answers. Like someone once said to me that what they always find, let's say, about me is I'm able to live with the question.
Yeah.
Okay? People says they don't understand how I'm able to live with the question. As a religious person, I live with a lot of questions. I recognize that I don't understand, and when I say I don't understand, it's not simply we don't understand. So I'm sitting there saying, we don't understand. I don't have this understanding whatsoever, and what that says is that the world is complex, and it's hard for me to try and get a grasp on it. Now that can lead a lot of people to secular answers. It can lead a lot of people to what happens a lot of times is that people want to give very black and white answers and able to dogmatize it through. I tell people there was once a case of a woman who this was after menopause, was put on estrogen by her doctor, and she went through resurfacing of a slight menstrual, not a real menstrual cycle, but what happened is the menstrual cycle came back very, very short. She had a small menstrual cycle and so forth. And she called me and asked me a shaila about it. And she was very upset, because now she'd have to go through all halachos of nida again. And why was she upset? Because she was a frum woman who followed halachos right up until menopause. And then when she went into menopause, she no longer had to keep the nida cycle and thing. And she said all throughout the years that she went through nida and stuff like that, her marriage was always rocky. Now, when she hit menopause, and she didn't have to go through nida and all these things with nida and so forth, all of a sudden, her marriage blossomed. Okay, and it was like wonderful. And she says, I'm frightened to go back to nida, to keep the halachos of nida, because it had such a difficult effect upon our marriage. So she asked me, is there any way I can work this out? And I couldn't find a heter for her, and I spoke to other rabbanim, couldn't find a heter for her. The fact is, what always hit me about that story is, you ever hear anything about nida, it's always how nida improves the marriage.
Yeah, I'm thinking there was something wrong to begin with.
Okay, and well, that's true also.
Admittedly, I could be wrong.
But the fact is that I don't know the situation and so forth. But the point is, though, is that how many times I remember when I was a young rabbi, a young couple came to speak to me and said, listen, we're having problems because everything we read in the books about Nida ain't happening in our relationship. Okay, and the fact is I directed, so the truth is that there are other situations with other perspectives and so forth and so forth. The fact is different effects and so forth and so forth. But if you're going to try and say you should do this and here's the reason, you don't want to hear an argument that this is going to cause more difficulties in your marriage relationship by keeping Nida. Right. The point is that there are cases of that. Right. And the fact is that doesn't change the fact that that's still the halacha. Right. And the point is that you're dealing with, what I'm just trying to say is that Torah is much more complex than people think it is. Sure. And the fact is that when you're dealing with it, you have to how many times I've spoken to people, or intermarriage is bad because the non-Jewish woman is the non-Jewish person comes across the argument is, I remember one time this guy comes up to me and says, it was a conservative, this older conservative company says, we're against our son intermarrying, but then, father, we accepted it, and she's such a fine person, and so forth. I looked at him and said, what, you think your son was going to marry a person who wasn't a fine person? It was like the intermarriage argument was every person of the other faith is going to be a bad person. Right. Guess what? They're also going to be a nice person. Right. Okay, so the point is that you can't give answers against intermarriage because they're all bad people. Right. And the problem is that's a simple answer. The fact is life is much more complex. It's much more difficult. And the point is that simplistic answers, it's like Zalman said, the fact is a lot of times simplistic answers will keep some people in the group and turn off the other people, and unfortunately there's the other people that you may really want in the group more. But the fact is that or somewhere you want them in the group. But the point is that life is complex. So when you come across a work, and this is why I want to learn this further with you, and this is why I really want to learn this, is the fact that when you come across someone who's pointing out to the complexity of values, how multidimensional this concept of self-love is, that it leads to self-confidence. It also leads to selfishness. It can be something that can cause a tremendous amount of evil, but it's also necessary. Now you're dealing with reality. And now you're dealing with a real essence you have to work with, and how you balance it. And the only way you know how to balance it is if you are someone who's thinking it through. Right? Because in the end, you have to know how to balance it. I'll just tell you, I was once in a sukkah with someone, and it was cold. It was 40 degrees, whatever. Fahrenheit. It was a little chilly. It was a little chilly. I'm still in the Fahrenheit. Okay, and the person was saying to me, okay, at what temperature can we go in? I said, whenever you're cold, you have to go in. He says, you're the rabbi, you tell me when I go in. I said, yeah, when you're cold. If you're cold, go in. He says, I want an answer. What degree can I go in? 38? 39? What? I said, that's not the way it works. It's subjective. If you're cold, well, you go in. And if you're not cold, you can't. You shouldn't go in, right? And one person may go in, and the other person doesn't want to go in, because one person is more sensitive, and one person's less sensitive. Okay, and this person had real difficulty with that answer. The fact is when you start seeing complexity, and you start doing, which means you have to know how to balance, and it means you've got to be someone who has to think through these things. Once you have this idea that you have to be the person involved in making that decision, it becomes fact. And the fact is what I always point out to people is that how much you really ultimately are the person making the decision, because even the person you're going to ask your shaila to, why did you choose this rabbi and not that rabbi? because you're making the decision. Remember going up to someone who's like, that's this Rav, he's right. He said, why'd you choose him? This person was so uncomfortable with me pointing out to him that you're making the decision of who you're going to ask your question to. Therefore, you are already in the decision-making process. Totally freaked him out. Okay, you're already into the process. So the fact is, you are into the process, and therefore, even though you may not like the complexity of life, that's the way God created this world, and guess what? That's what life is about. And some people have to take. Thing is, some people can't handle the complexity, so they have to choose simplistic ways. But you know something? Some of the big differences in life is I've seen from certain people who basically say, I know I asked a shaila, simple, but it was such a different thing. The people from the previous generations, I'm a Pashut Yid, this is where I make decisions, and I'm not going to say that I'm one of the Gedolei Hador, I'm not going to say I'm absolutely right. Nowadays you get people making simplistic decisions, and they all have to consider themselves to be the greatest decision makers as they make these.
Explain.
You know, nowadays what you find is that, and this is I'm saying sadly, is that people who need or who find answers in a simplistic way, right? They now look upon themselves as the greatest thinkers in the world with their answers. What?
Wait, they look at themselves.
The dumber you are, the smarter you think you are.
Well, it's a certain aspect where simplicity has become like.
It's the forefront. It's the getter.
It's almost like we give this answer, and it's really a very simple answer, and we make it seem like it's a reflection of how deep you are.
Well, the Kibbutz last night, he was talking on marriage, and he told us.
Yeah.
He told a story of I think it was a Kibbutz. It was a Kibbutz. They were talking about marriage, and he was mentioning that this couple, I think they were about to get married. They were about to get married, and the rabbi, this bacher came to him, and like it was the next for his wedding or something, and he was freaking out. He's like, I can't be with my wife, with my future bride. I don't find her attractive enough. And he's like, yeah, and he said, and he apparently went to his rabbi, and his rabbi said, don't worry. Because and he's like, well, why are you engaged her? Why were you married? And he was saying, oh, she's mitos and blah 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 and blah blah. And he was saying, yeah, but are you attracted with her? Do you want to sleep with her? Essentially, and he was saying no. And his Rav, who he went to before going to the Tats, said, oh, don't worry about it. Simplistic answer, not dealing with the root cause.
Right.
And then I think they got divorced like the day after they got married or something.
I mean, that's a little bit extreme also.
I know it's extreme case, but I feel like that stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
Also, I know for myself in dealing with you, is that when you ask Shilas, you should really argue. You should really argue. You should really argue. You should say, well, Rabbi, why do you say this is a big thing? Why do you think this is important? Why, I'm feeling this way? Really, go at it.
I mean, there are. See, what it gets down to is, and then you look at the complexity of it.
Right.
There are people who maybe, when they got married, they weren't really attracted to each other that much, and so forth, but their marriage turned out to be okay.
Right.
Because this was the objective in that marriage. Their marriage was not. There are people. There are different measures of sexual drive.
Right.
There's different interests in sexuality, and the people are different. The fact is that I wouldn't sit there and say that every person who gets married, when they're not, it might be the person's just not, sexual attraction is not that important to that person. So therefore, that issue. On the other hand, when you say to someone else but it has to come from the personality. See, one of the things that happens is everyone telling you what you should be as a tzaddik. You know what I mean? It's like everyone is telling you, when that person's saying it's not important.
Right.
It may not be important to you, but it may be important for them.
Right. So you have to be able. So I guess my issue that I have, and I'm sure other people have this, is you have to have the fortitude of self to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm going through, and if you're really trying to give me if you're really trying to give me a wisdom to help me out or advice, you have to understand where I'm coming from.
Exactly.
And I find that for myself a personal struggle.
Yeah, but the fact is that it's important to understand that people are different. You know, what I always find interesting is how some people give answers assuming everyone is the same.
So how do you balance growth with fortification itself? Like, how do you?
Because growth is.
Sorry. How do you balance growth, fortification itself, and then asking advice?
And that's what growth is about. That's what growth is about.
But I mean, you can be. What if you're? But how do you know if you're being led wrong, or how do you know if?
It's all part of the process.
That's also part of who you choose to be your mentor, which is.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, the mistakes along the way is also part of the process.
Also, I feel like we're so ingrained. Like my sister was saying, we're so ingrained in society and what society thinks and what people think that we lose focus.
The fact is that we also don't recognize how our standards are so different. There's individual standards for what we want and what's important to us. I mean, it's really, you know, people give objective statements and they make it seem that these are objective value statements. Like every tzaddik has to feel like this, or every tzaddik has to be like this. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of times it's a matter of your own personality. Right. You know, there's different ways for people to think and so forth. You know, I say this to my Rabbi yesterday, but I was once asked a shaila. There was once a case of a Kohen who was going out with a woman who was halachically problematic for him to marry. So he asked me a shaila. What?
Either Gera or divorce.
Yeah, he couldn't marry her. Okay, so the fact is he asked me. The truth of the matter is, I was trying to find a heter for him and so forth and so forth, and he asked someone else who was close to a Price. Price was a big gadol here in Toronto, right? Yeah. And I said, why don't you ask for a Price, Shala? And he said, you really don't know her Price, do you? Right? He said, Price would say, let him go find another girl. You can't marry her, so let him go find another girl. Okay. You know, that would be her Price. So you're telling me her Price was not big romantic. And yet, there's a story that's presented about Rabbi Yosher that the Shamish came into his apartment in the YU dorm. Rabbi Yosher had his own apartment in the Morgenstern dorm. Shamish came into it, and Rabbi Yosher was totally disheveled. He stayed up all night. He looked like, I don't know. And the Shamish was really concerned. And Rabbi Yosher just kept saying, I couldn't find the heter. I couldn't find the heter. It turned out that Rabbi Yosher was dealing with a shaila of a Kohen and a woman he couldn't marry. He stayed up all night trying to find a heter. And in the end, he was totally broken because he couldn't find a heter. Now, the truth of the matter is, Rabbi Yosher was a remarkable romantic. Okay, they say that even though briskers never visit the grave, graves, Yosher used to go every Erev Shabbos to his wife's kever in Boston. And people ask me, he says, "What are you? You're a brisker. How do you hug it?" He says, "I just can't be apart. I have to go." I mean, he was a remarkable romantic. So the point of the matter is, here you have two gadol, one gadol. Right, and they're both up there in that stratosphere of gadlus, you know. So a Price basically, you know, can't marry this woman, marry another woman. Yosher was like, this might be the one, the romantic, you know. And the fact of the matter is do we understand that type of complexity? And to understand that the answer for you is not the answer for this person. Now, it might be that Rav answered the question because the guy's already 24 hours before he's getting married, so he's sitting there saying, don't worry about it, it'll be okay, you know. What are you going to do, right? You know,
friction is friction. Yeah.
Right, but the fact is,
friction or momentum,
is that you basically you have to see the complexity. And the fact is once you start dealing with the complexity, then you start recognizing the individual. And that gets back to your question. The fact is that a lot of times they don't want to let you, ultimately, in the end, the buck stops with you. So the point is that everyone's concerned that maybe, we don't want the buck stopping with you. The fact of the matter is, there's a famous story about the dropping of the A-bomb, and everyone told Harry Truman, who was the president of the, it must have been the most difficult decision that he ever had to make, to drop the A-bomb. And there's a few stories about that. First of all, Truman did is he didn't call he didn't call it a cabinet meeting. People said the cabinet, he didn't call a cabinet meeting because he said that even if he would have put it to a cabinet vote, it would be understood that he let the cabinet make the decision. So he decided that he would let the cabinet make the decision. So it's ultimately his decision. So he says, I make the decision. So what he did is he went for a walk by himself. He said when he came back, the decision was very straightforward. Of course he had to drop the A-bomb. That was the only choice. He says it really wasn't that hard a decision. But the truth is, it was his decision. Now, he was a person who had on his desk, the buck stops here. The fact is that should be on every person's desk. The buck stops here. Okay? Who are you going to ask your shalos to? The buck stops here. But now, once you understand that the buck stops here, guess what? You have to accept the responsibility for what that goes with that type of responsibility, with the kind of perception. Okay. Call it a night.